Good evening. Welcome to the Community Awareness Committee's May panel discussion. Our topic this evening is mental health. I am Trish Steiner, Chair of the Community Awareness Committee. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Community Awareness Committee is a committee of the Neighborhood Safety Commission. The Neighborhood Safety Commission is comprised of individuals who are appointed by the chairman and the district commissioner. The Neighborhood Safety Commission was created on September 28, 1999 by a resolution of the Cobb County Commissioners. It is the policy of the Community Awareness Committee not to discuss any specific individual, any specific past or present incident, or past or present cases. We welcome you and thank you for attending this evening, and welcome those of you who are watching on Cobb TV. Our committee members are Pearl Roberts and Joel Cope. We have cards available for written questions. Please raise your hand and we will collect your questions throughout the discussion this evening. Please turn your cell phones off or on silent, as your phone will interfere with the broadcasting of this live discussion. Thank you. Our moderator this evening is Kim McCoy, Director of Victims Witness Unit, Office of the District Attorney. We especially want to thank Kim for being our phenomenal moderator. Kim will now introduce our distinguished panel members to you.
Thank you, Trish. I'm excited about the panel tonight. We have some great community representatives here to share with us some very impactful information about mental health issues and how that intertwines into all of the work that we do. So we have some representatives from our mental health court, which we learned about accountability courts a while back, but some specific focus tonight with our mental health court and the services that they offer. We're going to hear from the Community Services Board, which is a treatment provider here. We're going to hear from NAMI, and I'm going to let our representative tell you about that. And we're going to hear from a defense attorney, criminal and civil attorney, who's going to talk about how his work is impacted by mental health issues. And then we're going to hear from a very special person in our community who's willing to share her story with you. So we're very excited this evening to have these members. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a second and just ask each of you to introduce yourself, give us your name, if you are involved with an agency, what that agency is, and a little bit about its mission, and then we'll get into our questions this evening. So, Jenny, I believe we'll start with you since you're sitting directly to our left.
Hi, my name is Jenny Haynes. I am the program coordinator for adult case management services. They actually go into the communities and help work with individuals who have mental health disorders in their homes. I work with the Cobb Community Service Board.
And tell us a little bit about the overall mission of the Community Service Board.
Well, the mission of the Community Service Board is to promote recovery, to help individuals live the best lives possible in the community. And it's really driven by what the individual wants. So individuals drive their own recovery, they drive their services, they tell us what they'd like to accomplish, and we figure out how to help them get there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Susie, if you will talk to us a little bit about your perspective and the agency that you represent and your involvement with them.
Okay, my name is Susie Kyle, and I'm with NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And the National Alliance on Mental Illness is made up of families who have loved ones that live with a mental health diagnosis. And our mission is to advocate for them, to educate, and to support research, and to do everything that we can to help our family members.
Great. And so you represent NAMI, but there's a Cobb chapter of NAMI as well. Is that correct?
There are affiliates all over the state. I'm with NAMI Northside Atlanta, and I'm also on the board of NAMI Georgia.
Great. Thank you very much. And Derek, tell us a little bit about who you are and what message you're here to share with us.
Sure. I'm Derek Gage. I'm the managing partner of the Gage Law Firm, the only partner. I am a criminal trial litigator. I've been practicing here in Georgia since 2004. And most of the work that I handle is felony work, and I would say probably 85 to 90% of my clients struggle with some form of mental illness, some acute symptoms. And I've been doing this kind of work since I was in indigent defense, probably for, since 2005 or 6, when I ran a mental health unit for DeKalb County Public Defender's Office. So it's been a good long time that I've been doing this work.
Thank you. And Sue, if you will introduce yourself a little bit to us and then tell us what you want us to know.
Sure. My name is Sue Ryerson. I'm a mental health speaker, presenter, and filmmaker. I suffer from bipolar disorder, and I decided that I had done very well in life staying stable, and I would like to share that and teach people how to do the same. I'm also a stand-up comedian. That helps.
That's very good to know. We may put that to use throughout the course of our panel this evening. A little lightheartedness. And Adrian, we learned about accountability courts in one of our previous panels, but tell us a little bit from your perspective, I guess just in your own words, how you describe the mental health court and its application for our community.
Yes, thank you, Kim. My name is Adrienne Bowen. I'm the coordinator for the mental health court here in Cobb County, Georgia. It's been running for a couple of years now. We have had 2 graduations, which is where we get to see the success that our program is able to create in our participants' lives. Folks come to us who have pending criminal charges, and they are put into the mental health court as a condition of either a sentence or a bond agreement. They have certain conditions that they must meet in order to move through the program. That includes drug and alcohol screening. They attend group, some as much as 4 times a week. They see the judge every week. The judge gets a report card on them, says whether they've done well that week or whether they haven't, and the judge addresses them individually based upon that report card. As people move through the phases of our program, they are supervised to a lesser degree as we see that they can supervise their own behavior. The most straightforward mission of the mental health court is that we are trying to deal with folks who have a mental health condition, but for that mental health condition, they would not be in the criminal justice system. So if we get them appropriately medicated, if we get them in appropriate groups, and we get them stable in their living and personal situations, then we anticipate and hope and move them forward so they won't come back into the system again.
And I'm going to stay with you for just a second. So I want to dispel this myth really quickly so we can focus on the severity of what we're talking about.
Okay.
If a criminal offender is arrested and he or she comes into the system for prosecution, that person can't, quote unquote, cry foul that they have a mental health issue and take advantage of your court to cop out from the charges. And I'm stating it that way because that's the misconception that I hear in the community. I believe you stated they are assessed for their mental health issue because but for their mental health issue, they probably would not have committed the criminal offense.
That's correct. And what we have to do oftentimes is separate the individuals who have a mental health condition, and again, but for that, they would have not committed the criminal act. Or you have certain criminal offenders who have a mental health condition. They are not mutually exclusive. But we do our best to address and bring into our program individuals who, when you treat that mental illness, you will not see further criminal activity. That often can be a fine line, and there are times when it takes a period of time to get folks adjusted on their medications, or we also deal about 65 to 75% of our population is dual diagnosed, which means they have a mental health condition, also a underlying substance abuse problem. So sometimes it's weeding through those different issues and finding out what the paramount is, but I think we do a fairly good job of distinguishing those groups. And also you have to remember that people coming into our program have to admit their guilt. They come in, they plead guilty, so they are under a court sentence. That sentence condition, if they complete with us, then based upon their criminal history, it may be that the charge that they're allowed to withdraw that guilty plea and have that case dismissed. Or if they had prior offenses, then usually the sentence consists of a period of time in prison, suspend that time based upon them being and completing the mental health court. And completing mental health court is not easy. I look at some of the trials and tribulations and peaks and valleys that our participants go through and am quite amazed that they figured out the path to walk to make it through that program. We do everything we can to assist them, but this takes a personal commitment to want to make a change in their own life, and change how they are interacting with their family, with the community, how they are a benefit or a cost to that community. And we have seen tangible proof that the folks who have graduated from our program have become benefits to this community.
Thank you. I appreciate the passion that you have for that court and that excellent explanation. So I know many of you on the panel have had some interaction at some point with our mental health court. Explain to us, if you will, what that interaction has been and how, particularly Community Services Board, how you interact with mental health court and the services that your agency would provide.
Sure. I feel very privileged that we get to partner with Mental Health Court to be their treatment provider. So most all of the folks who enter into the Mental Health Court program receive services from Cobb CSB, psychiatric services, medications, nursing, case management, group therapy. There's a whole host of services that are available to the individuals. Also, as Adrian said, individuals have co-occurring substance abuse and mental health disorders, so they receive treatment for both of those as well. We come to the table. We actually, Adrian didn't speak about this, but there's a whole group of individuals who come to the table every week to review the individuals in mental health court, figure out what's going right, what's not working, how can we fix it, how can we tweak their services, what other supports can we wrap around them to give. And we have lawyers and the sheriff's department representatives and probation and treatment and of course Adrian and a whole host of people who are really passionate about seeing these individuals succeed. So I feel really lucky that I get to be a part of it and that our service board is providing the services to these folks.
Thank you. And Susie and Derek, have you had involvement or your agency's involvement with our mental health court and talk to us a little bit about that?
I have not personally. I do know of someone that has just graduated from that program, from the program in Cobb.
And without giving details, would you say that was beneficial to them?
Very. Her mother is in my affiliate, so
Excellent. Thank you.
very good things. I've heard very good.
Thank you. Derek?
Yes, lots.
Okay.
I have actually worked on the teams of a variety of accountability courts. I'm chair of the misdemeanor mental health court in DeKalb, was on their staff for a long time. This is Judge Bethel's court that started back in 2001. It is invaluable. And I think that it provides, for folks who do get caught in the criminal justice system, it provides them an opportunity to avoid that criminal label, which I think is extremely important. But at the same time, provides a level of accountability that they don't always have, and especially when you're in that revolving door type situation, you need that accountability in order to find a good foundation to build upon. And I think that's what the accountability courts and mental health courts really do provide. And I will echo what she said. If I'm talking to a client who is going into mental health court, if they're not, one, stable, and two, committed, I don't even consider it an option because it is so difficult, because it requires such commitment. And, unless they have that, they really shouldn't be getting involved in it, is always the way that I look at it.
Okay, thank you. And so we focused a little bit so far on those persons who are arrested, the options for persons who are arrested, but we know that there are many people in our communities who live with mental health issues every day. What do we do for that population of people? How do we get the word out to them that there is help available? How do we steer them in the direction of, I believe, Sue, you said you've lived a successful life with your diagnosis. How do we encourage people to do that, and where do we send them? And then the twofold question is there also support for family members and loved ones of persons who are diagnosed with mental health issues? And Jenny, you just happen to be in the seat, so I'm going to start with you again.
So for, and I'll speak to my experience, and other people may have other resources that they can share. the Community Service Board has a host of resources, community-based, which means we actually go to the individuals where they are. We have different levels of case management services based on if you're just coming out of the hospital or if you've been able to be successful and remain out of the hospital for a while, but you need some additional support. We have substance abuse services and services for those who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And you can access those services by calling, and I can give the number if that's okay. The Access Center number is 770-422-0202, and that is how you get into any of our services. You call them, you explain what's going on. They will help to figure out what kind of where you need and where they need to direct you. We also have now a behavioral health crisis center, and that is on County Services Parkway. Individuals, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Individuals can go to that center if they feel like they're in a crisis and they need immediate assistance. Obviously, you can go to the ER as well, but the ERs are very much overpopulated. So we're trying to divert some folks to our health center because we also want to try to provide the services for individuals in the least restrictive environment. So if we can keep you from going to the hospital, that's what we'd like to do. So our health center acts as sort of the gatekeeper for helping to figure out what does somebody really need.
Great, thank you. Susie, I'm sorry, what would you share with the community?
Well, like I said, NAMI is made up of family members, and we have support groups. We have a family-to-family course, which is a free 12-week course for the family members, and we meet each week and cover different subjects like crisis, medications, communication skills, and different things each week. And you get a notebook, and plus you're with other people who understand. And that is so important. People come in and in just a few weeks they're saying, this is life-changing. It's just a wonderful organization, and we have peer groups, peer support groups, peer-to-peer, which is like the family-to-family, but is for the individuals with the diagnoses. And we have an In Our Own Voice, where individuals with the diagnoses are trained to go around and speak to different groups. And that has been very effective, and it just helps everybody. So we do a lot. We're very busy. We go to the Capitol. We had Mental Health Day, and we advocate and go meet with our senators and representatives and just speak out on behalf of our loved ones and try our very, very best to fight the stigma.
Great, and we're going to talk about stigmas in just a few minutes, but why don't you go ahead and tell us how to find more information about NAMI, and is it, it's a member organization, is it a dues-paying organization?
Dues, $35 a year, and the membership includes NAMI National, so you get an advocate magazine, and you're involved with all the NAMIs, the NAMI Georgia, your affiliate, and we have a walk coming up that's very important. They do those all over the country, and so we have a NAMI walk October the 8th at Grant Park that we're very excited about. I'm working on that. You know, when you start volunteering, you really get pulled in. So one thing leads to another. Anyway, but I love it. I've been with NAMI 10 years, and so I really am enjoying myself.
Very good, thank you. Derek, where would you direct people if mental health court is not an option? What are other options for them in or outside of the legal system in tackling the mental health issues?
Well, I guess, Kim, the way that I approach it is very individualistic. And, you know, anybody who has worked with me in the past knows that what I think is one of my top priorities when I'm starting working with a client is building rapport with them. Because if I don't understand where they're coming from, if I don't understand how they tick, then I'm not going to make any progress with them. They're not going to trust me. They're not going to buy into my message or whatever I'm trying to do for them. So, I think in terms of the question of how you direct them to services, more, what services necessarily are out there, but how you do it, I think, has to be a very nuanced approach because, my mom was schizophrenic. I grew up with it in my house. I have major depressive disorder. She gave me a lot of insight as to, and I'm very curious to hear Sue's input on this and her perspective as well, because her perspective was, I cannot stand when I walk into a psychiatrist and he tells me, I'm going to put you on these meds and these meds and these meds and pushes me out the door. And, what do you see in the criminal justice system every time is a judge pointing over the bench and saying, you just need to take your meds and everything would be better. And I don't care whether you have a mental illness or not. Nobody wants to be told what to do. Nobody wants to be told this is the way you have to live your life or else you're not going to be happy. And I think that if you approach it in such a way where the client feels that they're in control, then you're going to have a much greater level of success in directing them towards services, because in the end, they are in control of their health care. They're not going to be in the structure of a mental health court forever. The court isn't going to have jurisdiction over them. And if you can make that connection with them, then you're more likely to be able to direct them towards services. And I think secondly, you have to have an extreme level of patience, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a family member, whether you're a member of a mental health court team. This stuff does not work fast. And the metaphor I tell every single family member that ever meets me for the first time is, you are essentially in a freighter-sized boat with the rudder a size of one of those little paddle boats, and you are on really rough seas. And the best you can do is to try to point that freighter in a decent direction towards calm waters, celebrate every little victory, and hopefully that person ultimately finds their way to those calmer waters and learns how to manage it. And so long as I think you take that approach, at least in my experience, I've seen a lot more success. And you just have to put a little bit of trust in the person that you're working with.
Okay. Sue, what would you share with people who would ask you, what do we do? Where do we refer? How do we help? What would you say?
Well, I refer them first to NAMI because I've done, 24 presentations with them, so that's my natural course. But I usually tell them, there's Google mental health associations, and I'm like, there's 20 billion of them now. And please go see somebody immediately. I tell them, go to your regular doctor, tell him what's going on. He'll refer you to a psychiatrist who can then monitor medication once they determine what it is you have. And I'm like, I always tell them the first and most important thing they need to do is recognize that they have a condition, that there is something wrong. When I do the presentations, that's a big focal point of, when was the first time you realized that something was going on in your head that wasn't going on in everybody else's? I was 14 and kept it quiet until I was 28, and I begged people not to wait that long. That's why I'm focusing now on making videos and doing presentations for high school kids and college kids. And I can use myself as an example of what not to do when you don't feel good. Don't keep it to yourself. Tell anybody you can. Tell everybody. Don't keep it a secret. It's not going to help.
Okay, thank you. Adrian?
Obviously, our normal course of referral is to the CSB. I tend to get, and oftentimes after graduation, because we've been fortunate to get very good press out of the graduations we've had, I've had numerous phone calls come in with people who know that their situation may not be exactly what mental health can do, but looking for that referral or that direction or that insight. Always go through to make sure they don't have a criminal history or pending criminal charges, because we certainly want to step in and intervene if that's something that we can do right at that moment. Oftentimes that's not the case, which is a good thing, but still you've got to point them in the right direction. So we will certainly refer to the CSB directly. Sometimes it's a situation where they need to seek alternative help through the courts, may refer them to probate court, also refer them to NAMI in regard to, oftentimes I get the call from parents of adult children, and they're looking for some sort of direction or assistance, and NAMI just provides a great structure and an opportunity to step in with folks who are walking the same walk they are and have been at that end of the road frustration, aggravation, not knowing where to go, and then they turn to NAMI and they find that supportive structure and network of referrals that they can utilize for themselves and for their family member.
Great, thank you. A couple of you have mentioned the word stigma. Let's talk a little bit about the stigmas that are associated with mental health issues, because in reality, we know that they're there. So how do we educate people to get away from those stigmas? What do we tell someone that when you're talking to them, you realize they may have a bias, negative bias toward mental health issues? Adrian, we're going to start with you this time. If you can talk a little bit about biases and stigmas and how we overcome that.
We see it with folks who, as you stated in the beginning, some folks think that we're just letting people whip out that I have a mental health condition card and letting them go and on their way and not holding them accountable. That is certainly not the approach we take, nor do we want anybody to come away with the impression that this is an easy way out. I'm speaking specifically about mental health court. It is a much more difficult route for folks to go through our program than it is for them to take a sentence or a plea, even if it's prison time sometimes, than to come in with us. In regard to stigma, we address that in some of our court sessions and with some of our folks individually, because obviously anybody saying that they're a participant in the mental health court may generate that stigma to begin with. And what I have seen is for our participants, over the course of time that they are participating with us, it is very heightened and they are very sensitive to that in the beginning, but there is an evolution of acceptance for them personally, for their family members, and a coming to a comfort level of where they are and what they need to do. And we also want to encourage them that it is not a badge that they must wear, be it good or bad. It is a part of who they are and where they come from. Just like I'm a very short little person, that is a part of me that will never change. So the difference is people can see that I'm a little short person. So that's a label that I'm going to wear on my own every day. Where with mental health, sometimes, hopefully, you get to the point where it's your determination whether or not that becomes a part of your circle of what you broadcast to the world. And getting folks to the point where they decide that they can make that determination on how far they go and what they share is a great step that we see our folks process too.
Thank you. Sue?
Stigma.
Mhm.
For a person who has an illness, it hits when I least expect it. And from people I would never think would think that way. It's always a surprise. I don't think it'll ever stop being a surprise. It doesn't stop me. I have become more and more vocal about my illness, about mental illness in general. I was just explaining to Adrian before we started, in between video projects and speaking, I want to get a job. Well, if you Google me, the first thing that comes up is a documentary I did about bipolar. I'm not getting any return phone calls. People Google when they hire. They see that, they go to the next candidate. I didn't expect that. It never occurred to me. To me, it's just, this is what I have. It's no big deal. You deal with it, you move on, you take care of yourself, tell everybody you know, have them keep an eye on you too, and you go through life. I forget sometimes that that's not how people think. And that was a big surprise, having the employment area get tough. It's going to be a battle.
I'm speechless. I don't know how to respond to that, which is a first for those of you who know me. So, it's a catch-22 consequence that you're trying to educate and be proactive, and it's negatively impacting your job search. So I'm very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I don't regret it.
Sure.
And I'm going to go forward. I have several more projects coming up in the next 2 months. Eventually, that will become my way to make a living.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, in the interim, I'm going to have to put up with a lot of stigma in disguise of, oh, it's filled. It wasn't filled yesterday when I was there at 4 o'clock, but it's filled at 8 a.m. Okay.
So how do you encourage someone else to
I-
overcome those stigmas?
I explained to them that what's worked for me, I always preface it with, this works for me. The more people I tell, the more stable I become because they're going to catch a mood change probably faster than I will. So it saves me from going into an episode. It's caught. I rectify it. I call my doctor and say, I'm feeling a little manic. What do you want me to do? And he'll direct me. I've been going to the same doctor for 22 years, so it's routine with us. But I'd like to enlighten people that if you become public about it, it will bite you from time to time, and be prepared. And I give them examples. I try to give them examples of this is what can happen to you. Now I have a new one with employment, so to make them aware of that too. That's very tough.
But that's worked for you because that helps you.
Oh, yeah.
The publicness of your struggle helps you stay accountable and helps you stay on track.
Oh, tremendously. I have friends that I'm originally from New Jersey. I have 20 million friends up there that I can make a phone call, and when I say hello, they say, "What's wrong?" They know. And I can't lie. I'm not a good liar anyway, but I can't lie about it. And so it's caught as soon as it starts to take place. As soon as that transition starts to happen, I catch it. So I don't go to a full-blown episode. It works wonderfully, but you've sacrificed some things to do that.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that with us. Derek, stigma.
Well, I've never been that concerned about what other people say or think. But it's always very important to me what my clients think, because that's going to affect their ability to find treatment. And I think part of that starts with me. I will be the first to admit, it is very hard for me to avoid colloquial terms that you grow up with, saying stuff like crazy and insane, not necessarily pointed towards someone, but just as an adjective. And I do not allow those words. I don't allow my clients to say them. I try very hard to eliminate them from my speech. But I think that's part of where it starts. And then I guess my approach has evolved a little bit in the sense that I've realized over the years how inspired I am by folks who are able to get on top of these illnesses and manage them. And just my own personal experience, my mother's experience, and then, hundreds of clients who are able to do it. And my approach to them is always now is, look, this isn't something to sweep under the rug. This isn't something to, when you're talking with someone, just say, well, you know what, I'm like anybody else. No, you're not. You have accomplished something that most people have never had to even attempt to accomplish. Turning perception in on yourself when your mind won't let you, when you are convinced that everybody else is wrong, being able to have the strength to turn that perception in on yourself and actually start working on you instead of blaming it on everybody else is a strength of character that puts somebody on the upper echelon to me. And it is inspiring. And so, Sue's story underscores that, and your response makes it even more clear. When you speak to an employer and you present your struggle over bipolar disorder as something to be proud of, that is a strength as a potential employee, not something that is just a side note that you deal with. No, it was hard. And that shows a strength that a lot of people don't have. And so when my clients come to me and say, I'm having a hard time getting a job because I have a criminal record, or because they know that I have a mental illness, or I don't want to talk about it, my answer to them is always, yeah, talk about it. That's your strongest point, is that you have schizophrenia, is that you weren't able to speak in the same language as others in the community, that your mind was so powerful, and yet you had to rein it in order to work with the rest of us. And that is something that I always think should be promoted and not hidden. And that's been my approach as the years have passed by and how it's evolved with me and my clients.
Thank you. I can tell you're a great advocate for that, and it's very much appreciated. Susie, what What would you tell someone about stigmas and how we overcome those?
Well, to start off in our family-to-family classes, it always comes up that these are no casserole illnesses. And nobody shows up at the door with a casserole when your loved one is in the hospital. And we talk about it quite a bit because family members deal with other family members that don't understand. Sometimes the family doesn't understand as well as somebody else, a friend or someone. And so we talk about it a lot. And, I think bringing awareness and lighting up the Empire State Building with green during this month, that was one thing that was done. Talking about it and not being ashamed of it. And that's still hard for family members. They don't want to reveal things because they're protecting their loved one or they're protecting their family, and they don't want anybody to know that they're taking the class. And so there's a lot to be done. But we try. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do.
Very good. Thank you. Jenny.
We do this. We talk about it. We have discussions. We share information. We encourage the people who are going through the illness to be vocal. Speak up. Be vocal. Even if your voice is shaky, you gotta talk about it. We also need to talk about the facts. The facts about mental illness are that most of the people who have mental illness are not violent. Most of them will never come in contact with the legal system. I would bet that most of you, either sitting in the audience or watching this as it's recorded, have somebody in your community, somebody who lives next door who has a mental health issue that you don't even know about. So we have to talk about the facts and keep talking about it. We also have to change our language, and a couple of, you mentioned like the terms we hear, crazy or insane or whatever. But we also have to stop referring to people as their diagnosis. Someone isn't schizophrenic. They're not bipolar or borderline. They have schizophrenia. It's kind of the same thing as, I hear people refer to themselves as diabetic. Well, that's not your own, you have a disease. That's not who you are. It's a part of you, just like Adrian being short. It's a part of you, but it doesn't define wholly who you are. So we have to get away from using the words as a definition for someone. And then the other thing that came to mind as Sue was sharing her difficulty with employment is that we need to get behind supporting people in the field of recovery. It's a national movement, but Georgia has really gotten behind two certifications. One is called CPS, it's a Certified Peer Specialist, and the other one is called CARES, a Certified Addiction Recovery Empowerment Specialist. Those are both certifications that you can get through the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse and the Georgia Consumer Network on I'm spacing on the Mental Health Consumer Network. Mm-hmm. You can get those certifications and you can work in community mental health centers. You can work in hospitals. You can work in jails with somebody who has a diagnosis and who is living recovery, can get that certification and be employable. And in fact, we want folks. We have positions sitting vacant right now because we don't have enough people in recovery to fill those positions.
Okay. You mentioned the word facts. Let's stay on the term facts for just a second because we haven't really defined what mental health is. Let's talk about how we define what a mental illness is, and each of you can give your layperson definition or your professional definition if you want, and then what are the common mental health issues that we see in our community. We're going to start with you because you are the professional in the field.
Well, I'm not going to give the professional diagnostic definition because I don't think that does anybody any good except for a room full of clinicians. For me, when I talk to people, it's about the ability to function. Do you have something, are you experiencing something that keeps you from functioning at the level that you want to? Are you having trouble sleeping? Can you not, can you not sustain a job? Are you having trouble with your relationships with people, and why? I don't really get behind diagnoses too much. I mean, I know that you have to for, insurance purposes, but I really like to treat the person. What's going on? Because every person with schizophrenia or bipolar, they may have the same label, but they all present differently. There's all, some intricacy to them that's different from somebody else. So that's why you really have to look at them individually, see where they're coming from, what's their living situation like. So I don't like the technical clinical terms. I try to stay away from that.
Okay. But in case we have clinicians watching,
They should already know this.
okay, I won't box you into that. Anybody else want to elaborate on how we classify someone who may be suffering or may have a mental illness? Any other additions that you want to tackle? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the impact that the diagnosis may have on someone. How is their ability, we heard about the ability to hold a job and some of the things that's happening in that arena. What about housing? Is housing an issue? Are other factors like public benefits? Does it impact insurance? And each of you can kind of talk about your own perspective from what you've seen, but what's the overall impact that we're dealing here with when we're looking at those who suffer from mental illnesses? I know, Adrian, I'm going to start with you
No,
this
I'm
time.
good. I'm ready for this one.
Okay.
We find, and it's been done partially in criminal justice for several years, where somebody would come in, they had a criminal offense, and part of what the judge said when they put them on probation or whatever the sentence was, okay, now you need to go out and get some treatment. And then you report to your probation officer that you got that treatment, and then we'll check that box on that you completed that responsibility, and here you go. It's like handing somebody who drinks Diet Coke every day and saying, you can't have any more, and you need to report to me that you're not having any more, and then we'll check that box. You are asking people to self-direct and get themselves in the position to getting treatment or whatever that all encounters without the assistance that one of us would need in the professional community in order to navigate those very uncalm waters. Part of what mental health court does is we take a participant, they come in, our minimum qualifications are they're a Cobb County resident, they have what's called an SPMI, a severe and persistent mental illness, and we try to loosen that definition as much as we can in order to have our funnel as broad as we can. So they go through our assessment process, they get in, they enter their plea, boom, they're in a mental health court chair. We sit down with them and we look at the whole world that this person is living in. We look at their housing, we look at their medication, we look at their job, family, physical condition, ability to reach out to services, ability to obtain their GED, a whole myriad of different things. Because what we have found is if you don't treat the entire person and the services and at least refer them and get them in contact with the services that they need and then kind of stay behind them and say, okay, you've got A, B, and C to do and you need to do those over the next 3 months, it's very hard to follow through. Change is hard for everyone. No different for the folks that we're dealing with in mental health court. The benefit we have is that we have tried to form that conduit of different community organizations that we can partner with or refer folks to get that assistance that they need in those varying challenges that they may have. The accountability courts in Cobb County have just started a partnership with Cobb Works, and it's a program called REACT. And I'm sorry, I cannot tell you what the acronym is exactly for, but what we're doing is the people who are in accountability court, Cobb Works now has staff located directly in our office because we have folks who are underemployed, unemployed, or don't have the means to figure out what kind of position they can get other than a fairly low-paying, low-skill job. Now with this partnership with Cobb Works, we can get their aptitude testing done, we can get skills and abilities determination, we can help with the GED, we can also, with that, get GED paid for, the testing, those sorts of things. So because we've been able to kind of form that web of opportunity, we can touch our folks into those different opportunities.
Great. Sue, do you have anything to add to that?
Just say, a mental illness does affect every single aspect of your life. So you do have to learn the skills to keep going with the mental illness attached to you. It's always going to be there. It's not going to go away. I kind of did it on my own because I'm old enough that there was not a lot of this at the time. I found having a support team of very stable people to watch and to say, that's how you're supposed to react to that. That's what you do when this happens. And I started to learn skills that I wasn't born with. So I just did it kind of on my own and winged it, but it worked. So.
Derek, what about you? Do you see challenges with housing and other public benefits? And if so, do you advocate, and how would you advocate for your clients with those issues?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of these cases, by the time they're getting into the criminal justice system, their parents or family members have understandably and really necessarily said, you can't stay here anymore. For one, a lot of times there's safety concerns, and then, for other reasons, they don't want to enable anymore. And that's a large part of a person kind of finding insight, is not having that safety net all the time. And so, yeah, there's a lot of times that I'm looking just to get a roof over somebody's head that's safe. And so I think that's part of, everybody up here builds resources, or, folks in the community that and I'm not in the business of referring someplace where I don't know inside and out the person who is taking them in, because especially when you're dealing with places like personal care homes, which is a lot of what you have to rely on, you want to know the person running the show, because they are not closely monitored, they're not closely regulated, and you want to be sure that the person who's going to be watching over your client or a family member is somebody who has their best interests in mind. And so the way that I look at housing, at least in the beginning, is a place where they have a roof over their head, where they can focus on stability for a second, kind of like a breather, and then springboarding from there. But that is a difficult prospect, because there's not a lot of good housing out there, or there's not a lot of good community housing out there, and I don't think the cost really has anything to do as to whether the housing is good or whether it's not good. It's just knowing the resources.
Thank you. Susie, does NAMI focus on the issue of housing? And if so, what information would you share about that?
Well, first off, Adrian, the continuity of care that you just expressed and explained that's happening with the court system would be just so wonderful for our family members to have. I mean, without having to go through the court system. That's what we want. That's what we're advocating for. Housing is crucial, and a job, having a purpose, is vital. And all of those things, so it's just a matter of everybody working together in the community to bring about the services for our loved ones. And that we now have 5 peer support and wellness centers in the state. Thanks to Larry Fricks, who has worked hard for that. He's with the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. It's a place for them to go during the day. and they have activities there. They have support for our loved ones, a respite if they wanted, stay there for a week, because that's a place to go instead of having to go to the hospital. I mean, we need places like that. And that's, like I say, that's what we're fighting for. So
Great. And where are those 5 centers? Do you know?
there's one in Decatur. It's like a few miles away from the Avondale station, because I know that because that's where my son's been going. But I'm not sure about all the others,
Okay.
but they're on the website.
Great.
on
Thank
the
you.
web.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And Jenny.
The reality is, there is never, in my opinion, never going to be enough resources to meet the need. The vast majority of people that we serve at the CSB are indigent. If they do receive income, they're probably working with about $700 a month. And so, no, they can't afford housing. They can't, they can barely afford food and their medication. If they do have housing, they're not going to have money for medicine. So it's a constant struggle, to balance all of the needs. And we're constantly partnering with and trying to find community resources and trying to think of new ways to be creative to help them meet their needs, but there's just not enough.
And Cobb is full of resources. Cobb is a very resource wealthy community. And so some of these needs are being met by other nonprofit agencies who
Sure.
work very well with each other nonprofit agency. But as you said, there's still not enough to go around, because you've all alluded to the fact that it is more prevalent than anybody thinks, and quite honestly, probably more than anyone wants to admit. And it's an issue that with more awareness, hopefully we build upon not only our service delivery, but also our understanding and empathy when it comes to serving those and responding to those with mental health issues.
And I really think, if I could just add, I really think that if we could put our focus and our energy in building supports for the family members and the people who support individuals with mental health and substance abuse issues, if we had support for them, then they may not get to the point where they're so frustrated and overwhelmed that the only option is to say, you need to move on from here. So I think that's really where some energy and some resource needs to be shifted, so that we can help the people who love them take care of themselves so they can take care of them.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about demographics, and I'm probably not saying that right, but age ranges. We know that very young children can suffer from mental health issues. Teenagers can, and that's not just being a terrible adolescent. There are truly some mental health issues that need to be addressed in teenagers, as well as those in adults. Do we treat those segments any differently? Is there a specific way that we might respond to a person depending on their age?
Yes, you would. I mean, the medication regimens are different.
Mhm.
You wouldn't give a child the same strength and even the same kind of medication that you might give to an adult. But I think even, when we were talking about everybody having an individual pathway to recovery and individual treatment, it's the same thing for kids. You really have to hone in on what is their resource level? What are their capabilities as a young person? What's the family system like? So you have to kind of hone in on all of that. I think that we're seeing a greater number of individuals who develop mental illness early. Like in some of the research that I'm reading, 15 or so years ago, you would never, and maybe not never, you would not often see an individual, a young child under the age of 16 who would be diagnosed with something like bipolar or schizophrenia. And those numbers are actually growing. And we're not sure why. We don't know why at this point, but typically to develop a major mental illness, which are schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and bipolar disorder. The onset usually happens somewhere between the age of 18 and like your your late 20s. That's usually the range for those major illnesses to kind of the onset to appear.
Anyone have anything to add about that?
We have two programs. One, NAMI Basics, and I'm one of the state trainers for NAMI Basics. That's families dealing with children with child and adolescent. And so it's a different program than the family to family because you're talking about IEPs, you're talking about the school system and all the things that go with having a child. And children are really being diagnosed so much earlier. We see a lot of that. And what we're trying to do is have support groups for those parents because being with parents of 18 and older, they have a whole, it's better to separate because it's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, thank you. I will take a second to remind our audience, if you have questions that you want to send up, please think about doing that as we continue with the questioning of our panel members. Sue, I wonder if listening to us during our discussion this evening, if that has prompted you to think of something that you just really need to tell us about responding to the issue of those with mental health issues. If somebody came to you and said, what's the most important thing you want to impart, what would you tell us?
Talk about it. That's the most important thing, is talk about it.
For the individual person, but also for their support network.
Oh, yeah. And to build that support, you can go to NAMI, but you have to build a support network at home and with your friends. It doesn't end with you just don't go to a place and have a support group. There has to be a support group outside of that. You have to build your own. Mm-hmm. And I would tell them, just pull your closest friends together and sit down and talk.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that I think the community might struggle with, as well as those that someone could use as their support group, is often the denial that a mental health issue exists, even if someone has been diagnosed or maybe with a lack of a diagnosis, just something's not right and they don't know what that is. How do we support those people? Are there support networks out there? If I had a family member that I was concerned about that I couldn't reach, could I take advantage of your support systems in order to just be a better coping mechanism for myself? So Jenny and I think Susie probably can address, what do we do?
I would refer you to NAMI.
There's a word for that, and I wish I could pronounce it. I'm not sick. Well, actually, there's a book too. I'm not sick. I don't need help. We talk about this a lot in our class, and there are a lot of people that are reading that book because they have. There's a lot of advice. It's written by either a brother or a father of someone with a mental health diagnosis. It's a very hard call, very hard question, because, like Derek said, when it comes down to it, they have to come to terms with their illness and with accepting the help.
Okay, thank you. Jenny, I do want to come back to your new facility or your newer facility at Community Services. Tell us how someone might gain admittance to, because it's not an inpatient facility, is it? It is. Okay, well, just start from the beginning and tell us a little bit about it so I don't give any wrong information.
No, that's okay. It is an inpatient facility. There are 24 beds for 12 male, 12 female. And then there's also an observation unit. So like if you're somebody that you think you're in crisis, you think that you need some help, it's kind of stabilizing, or you just need somewhere to go to be safe for a minute, you can go to the 23-hour observation bed, and the professionals there will talk with you, they'll assess you, they'll figure out what exactly your need might be. You may not need to be admitted. You may just need to be linked up with our outpatient center, which is 2 buildings down. And they can give you the information for an appointment and how you get in there to get started in services. If you do need to be admitted for stabilization, they can take care of that too. It's a state-of-the-art facility. It's beautiful. I've been in it. It's if I had my preference of where I were going to go, that's where I'd want to be, because I feel like the way that it has been created really speaks to a person's individual recovery. Like, yes, we have to keep you safe if you're gonna, if you're at risk of hurting yourself or someone else, but the technologies now are so that you don't feel like you're in
A hospital.
a hospital or the psych, the psych ward, as people used to call it. It doesn't feel like that.
And what's the length of stay that someone might take advantage of?
It depends, and it depends is what I'll say.
Perfect answer.
We do have, because it's CSB operated, we do have some advantages to maybe having somebody have a longer length of stay than if they were in a traditional hospital. So I think
And
it's,
CSB, the advantage for CSB is that you're a community mental health provider, so there's sliding scale issues and fee things that can be looked at
there are,
that if someone went to a private
yes,
therapist might not be able to take advantage of.
and especially if you're somebody who is in crisis, I hear this a lot. They don't want to go to the ER because they already have a bill that's incredible. If you go to the behavioral health center, because we are a CSB, we are a safety net. And so you will not be turned away, even, not that ERs turn people away, but we have some advantages to operating that other folks, other hospitals don't have.
Okay. And let's not lose sight of the fact that CSB has day programs as well.
Absolutely.
And then just individual counseling
Absolutely.
options
We
that
have
are
individual counseling. We have outpatient groups that are sort of a check-in, or I'm not using the right language, a maintenance group. We have more intense groups that happen at the Circle, which is in Austell. We have locations all over Cobb County. We serve Cobb, Douglas, and part of Cherokee. And the other point about if you receive services at the Behavioral Health Center, all of our staff are able to go, like if you're in case management, but you have a crisis and you need to go to the hospital, and I say hospital, but I mean the Behavioral Health Center, we come to you, we see you there. So we oftentimes have a lot of difficulty getting access to area hospitals, and that's not the case. So the continuity of care can really remain intact if you're at the health center.
Great, thank you. And a couple of you alluded to the fact that not everyone with a mental health issue is dangerous. That's obviously what we see on TV, that something was done by someone suffering from a mental health issue, which is a negative connotation, and that adds to that stigma. So I'm not saying that happens. I'm not validating that. But we do know that there are some safety issues sometimes that arise with people with mental health issues, not only for the person, but maybe for a family member or someone who is their support group. What advice would we give to those family members or those support networks in the immediacy of a crisis? If they're in the middle of the crisis, what do we tell them to do? Adrian, we'll start with you and give Jenny a little bit of a break.
Cobb is fortunate to have, I'm not sure if all of their officers, but many of the officers who are practicing or patrolling here are going through what's called CIT training. It's crisis intervention training. And that gives a full 5-day course on dealing with folks who have diagnosed mental illness or undiagnosed, who have breaks, and who, when the police are called, the police are given through this training tools and resources in order to hopefully de-escalate the situation, determine the best method in order to deal with the situation. Is it best for a family member to drive the individual to the behavioral health unit or the hospital? Is it better for a deputy or police officer to escort that person to the behavioral health center? Officers have the option to determine, based upon the situation, if somebody has committed a crime in their act that can include littering or something to that degree, that they can pick them up and transport them to where they need to be. If it is such to a degree that their mental health is the overriding issue at that point, they can take them to a hospital, or they can take them to something like the behavioral health center and allow that situation to de-escalate. They can remove the individual who may be creating a dangerous situation for the family at that point and allow for some sort of intervening time period to elapse. And then there are additional steps that have to be taken. That there's not a guarantee that that person would be away for any period of time, except for they have to be assessed. I believe it's within 24 hours for a hold. So they've got a period of time that they know that that person would be safe, and also give the family the opportunity to seek whatever additional remedies they may be able to find. If there's alternative housing for that situation, if it's a sibling or a parent with one child, if you can diffuse that situation at the get-go, then hopefully you're not going to have a repeat, or you can have some interventive factors that can relieve some of that. So COP's fortunate to have officers who are trained in those skills and know what resources are available for them to take advantage of for folks that are dealing with mental health issues.
Thank you. And that is all throughout Cobb. So I believe almost all of our police agencies, whether it be Cobb Police, Cobb Sheriff, or our city agencies, they all have received that training in some fashion.
They
They
are,
do.
and it's an ongoing basis. I do a presentation on mental health court. I'm sorry, my calendar could tell you how often I do that, but it says I'm supposed to do it on that day, and that's when I go. So
Exactly. Thank you. Sue, what about you? If someone's in the middle of a crisis, what words of wisdom would you impart to them?
I've never had the occasion. I've been very lucky. I've never come across this situation, and I'm not sure I would be knowledgeable enough to say the right thing to him. I wouldn't want to take that chance. I would probably dial 911.
Okay. Derek?
Well, Adrian talked a lot about CIT. It floors me that Georgia does not require CIT training for every stinking officer out there. I cannot believe that they would not require that, because nothing bothers me more than getting one of those felony obstruction cases that could have so easily been somebody just taken to the hospital. But since the officer has no idea how to approach somebody who is actively psychotic, it is a self-fulfilled prophecy, and all of a sudden they're being arrested on these charges that carry prison time with them. Everybody should be CIT trained. And in instances, I think, where there is a crisis situation, I think it depends on the type of crisis. If it's one where, you're concerned as a family member about your safety or the safety of somebody else in the house, then, the answer is just to call 911 and, explain to the officer, look, if you have a CIT officer available, it's a mental health situation. Make it clear to the operator so that when a CAD is sent out, they can make sure, or at least they have somebody familiar with mental illness. And then, the law allows, as Adrian alluded to, it allows the officer to assess the situation and take a person to a hospital instead of a jail, even if they want to seek a warrant in the end. If they observe something that gives them probable cause or reason to seek a warrant, they can take the person to the hospital and then go to a magistrate. So you don't have to feel as a family member necessarily that a person is going to go to a jail, and you can fill in the officer when they arrive about the mental health situation as well. But the last thing you want is for a bad situation to turn into something that could be much, much worse. If you are trying to hold back because you don't want your kid going to jail, and then something worse happens and they're going to jail anyways, and on a much worse felony than what might have been a simple assault or criminal trespass or whatever. So, my advice to families is just don't take the chance. Call 911. You can deal with it. You'll find somebody in the criminal justice system who will listen, but don't take the chance of it becoming something you can't reverse.
And I think that's great advice, to give all of the information up front so that that information can be imparted from dispatch to the responding officer. Great information. Thank you. Susie?
Well, NAMI is responsible for bringing CIT to Georgia. It started in Tennessee, and we are doing everything that we can to have every officer trained. I've even been through the training myself, which was very interesting. To de-escalate, to care, to show compassion for these individuals that are struggling so much. And we tell all of our family members to ask for a CIT officer if they have to call 911. And hopefully there's one available. But we'll work on that and make sure that we will have one available.
It ain't y'all's fault. I can promise you that.
Well, thank you. Jenny, what about you?
Adrian stole my thunder. I was gonna,
Sorry.
yes, CIT. If it's an immediate threat or danger, want to call 911. If you're not sure, or if you think maybe it's escalating, but it's not quite at the level to call 911, you can also call the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, and that number is 1-800-715-4225. And we actually have in the state of Georgia a mobile crisis unit that could get dispatched to come to your location. It would be a therapist or a social worker who could come and assess the individual to see what other options could be rather than calling the police or having them go to the hospital.
Okay, give us that number one more time.
Mhm. It's 1-800-715-4225.
Great. Hopefully someone is listening or watching
Who could use it?
that can take
Yes.
advantage of that, and that can encourage the powers that be to have their officers CIT certified. Very good information. Susie, did you want to add something?
I was just going to agree with Jenny that the crisis line can be very helpful, and the mobile crisis unit, I've dealt with both, and have found a lot of help. So
Yeah, the individual can actually call if they feel like they're in crisis. They want somebody themselves to talk through or to talk to and talk things through. They can call. Family members can call. I'd also encourage people in the community to, we talked about starting the dialogue and continuing the dialogue. There's a training. It's called QPR training. It stands for Question, Persuade, and Respond. It's a training developed for everyone, lay people, clinicians, doesn't matter, QPR, and it teaches you how to identify that there's an issue, how to talk to the person in order to get them to buy into making a change or doing something different, and then it teaches you how to respond. Where do you go? How do you help connect them to what's needed next?
Great, and I'm sure someone could Google that.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
If they needed more information about that.
and also the people that answer the phone at the crisis line on the crisis line are trained counselors.
Great, thank you. Well, we are almost to our time, so I want to encourage each of you to think of what I like to end with as your elevator speech. What is the most important thing that you would like to impart to this audience? And we're going to end with that, but I want to take a second before we do to thank you for being here, to thank you for the information that you have imparted, the personal stories that you've shared, and the passion that you have shared, as well as the time and the devotion that you have committed to this issue and to helping our community better understand the issues of mental illness. So now back to you. I'm going to ask each of you to give your elevator speech, and then when we're done, we will turn it over to Ms. Trish, who will close us out. So, Adrian, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. The bravest and brightest and boldest people I know are the participants in our program. They take a step in a direction that may well be very unknown to them. And they put themselves to a degree in the hands of, luckily, very committed professionals who work as a team and assist them in moving forward through this process. We are no good at what we do if they don't buy into that process. They buy in because of the good rapport that they are able to create with the treatment clinicians that we are so fortunate to be able to partner with. the hero of mental health court is the participant from day one, when you're looking at them and you're saying, oh my goodness, this is going to be a hot mess, and here we go, to the day that they graduate. And we had one this past April who he had been estranged from his wife and his teenage daughter for years, and violent history between them, loud and angry, not physical. And they had kind of run to Massachusetts to get away from him and the controversy and the upheaval. And because they were able to mend that relationship, they came from Massachusetts to witness the graduation of their husband and father. And to see a father who has been through so much and caused so much, to be able to reach out and acknowledge his 17-year-old daughter who is standing there, and she stood up and she spoke and she said, I love you, Dad. That's why we do what we do.
Nice. Great success story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
Sue, what about you?
Well, if there's any teenagers or young people that watch this, if you don't feel good, if you feel like there's something going wrong on the inside, please tell somebody. If you can't talk to your mom and dad, go to a favorite aunt or uncle, a friend's mom or dad, but go to somebody, go to an adult and tell them and get things going, because next is when you can go to the doctor, get treated, stay in school, graduate, might get a master's. You don't know. But it all starts with telling somebody that you don't feel well. That's the most important step.
Thank you. Derek?
Well, I think there's one thing that I say more than anything, it comes down to what I feel over the years are the top 3 priorities when it comes to treatment. And I think a lot of it just comes from observing my mama and talking with her. I wish I should have brought a picture. Can y'all tell I'm a mama's boy? In my mind, it is a ladder. The top priority being that you have a treatment team you can trust, and that is a psychiatrist and a therapist who you can trust, who you buy into, not somebody who tells you everything you want to hear, but somebody who you can trust into the direction they are trying to take you. And that may change over time. It very likely will change over time. You might have different treatment team over time, but the second rung on that ladder in my mind is something that Sue has talked about a lot, and that is having a support system who you listen to, because you're gonna need them when things are starting to go sideways, to pull you aside and say, look, help bring you back on track, help bring to your attention that some of those old symptoms and that old way of thinking is coming into play. And then third is medications. And I think, that gets turned around so much, especially in the criminal justice system, that it's all about meds. And that is the message that I give my clients, is that it's not. If you're not taking care of that first priority, ain't nothing else gonna matter, because you're not gonna listen to your psychiatrist, you're not gonna pay attention to your therapist, you're not gonna engage them, and there's not gonna be any of the other stuff. And even to the point, and perhaps this is a controversial view, of trying from time to time, if you decide that you want to, not taking medications at all. And I can tell you my mother has tried that on 2 separate occasions. It didn't work. But she had a strong support system, and she did what she wanted to do because she was in control of her health care, and she didn't completely derail. And that support system guided her back when they realized that the symptoms were coming back. And so whenever I have a client asking me, I don't want to be on medications for the rest of my life, I say, you may or may not have to. But right now, things ain't going good. And if you decide down the road when you're managing well that you want to try without medications and you got all those other pieces together, then go ahead and try it. But for folks who don't have insight, who are struggling to get past denial, to have somebody telling them, take your pills, take your pills, take your pills, and this is all going to be rainbows and butterflies, is never, ever in the history of the world going to work.
Thank you. Susie?
I feel that I'm going to speak for the family members as the care people, the care persons, because I feel like if they don't take care of themselves first, then they're not going to be able to take care of their loved one or anybody else. And so I suggest that they come to NAMI, take the NAMI Family to Family class, get educated so that you understand and take care of it. The course also has a section on taking care of you. And you're around other people, like I say, that understand, so that you have a support group, and then we have our support groups that you can go to after that. But that is the most important thing that I can tell family members right now. Find out what's going on so that you can learn coping skills and the things you need to do, and you will get that in a NAMI Family to Family course.
Thank you. And Jenny?
I think that the most important thing to remember is that at the end of the day, they're people. I've been really fortunate to spend the last 15 years of my life working with individuals with mental health and substance abuse disorders. I've been in their homes, I've been in shelters, I've been in the woods, I've been under bridges. The people that I've worked with and the relationships that I've created with the individuals that I serve are some of the best relationships that I have in my life, and I've learned more valuable lessons from them than I've learned from most people who we might consider normal. So just remember that they're people who are struggling, and anything that you can do to have compassion and to help, lead them in a direction of getting help, that's what we need to do.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your words of wisdom, for your passion and your devotion. And thank you, least but not least, for being with us this evening and giving up your time. And we certainly appreciate you being here. Trish?
Thank you. Thank you for attending and watching on COB TV this evening. We especially want to thank our dynamic panel members and moderator. We are honored to have each of you as moderator and panel members this evening. Our community is very fortunate to have each of you educating the community concerning mental health issues. We commend you for your daily dedication to protect, support, provide care, services, assist with legal issues, and programs for individuals with mental health issues and their family members who are experiencing how to assist and support these individuals. You are appreciated, and we thank you for your daily service to help the community understand mental health issues. A special thank you to Brad for broadcasting tonight's discussion on COB TV. Thank you for joining us this evening. We invite you to watch all of our 2013 through 2016 panel discussions on the COB TV website or a link from the Neighborhood Safety Commission website. Please join us in September when we will resume our monthly panel discussions. We wish you the very best for an enjoyable, relaxing, and safe summer. Thank you. Good night.